Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Pokemon Victory Road World Cup. My name is Maeve O'Rourke. I am here with Jamie Boyd once again. Jamie, your last match was very reminiscent of Ultra Series to me. I said that to you in Lou between the games, but something very new here with this upcoming match between Switzerland and the Philippines.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting one. We've had two great games so far, and we're looking to get another third one here between the Switzerland and the Philippines. So we can have a look at how the teams are doing so far between them. It looks like it's going to be 3-1 to Switzerland here. So looking to push that advantage. If Switzerland win this game, then they are guaranteed at least a draw.
Yeah, and the Philippines, this match is between Tiago de Silva from Switzerland and Andrew Yap from the Philippines. And Andrew has his work cut out for him today. You can see he's definitely, he needs a win for his team just to move them, keep them in fighting contention. But one thing that I love here from the Filipino team, and something that I think we'll see a little bit later just based on that team preview in the break, is that two different Palkia teams on that Filipino team. And if you guys were paying attention during team break, Andrew Yap also, I believe, has a Palkia. So must be a lot of team building together, but I think it'll be really interesting for us to see exactly what that team has in store.
Yeah, Palkia does seem to be a restricted that is definitely more viable than it has been in the past. Definitely picking up on a lot of players' teams. We saw it yesterday's stream as well. We saw it put in a lot of work. So potentially Philippines jumping on the back of that, making good use of that Palkia. We'll have to see if they're able to do it again in this upcoming match between these two players.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing too as well for Switzerland, we'll be jumping right here to Andrew Yap, and he has, like we saw, that Palkia, Incineroar, Caesar, Mimikyu, Regieleki, and Landorus Incarnate. So, Palkia, one of those Pokemon that we see a lot with Trick Room. Mimikyu can also do Trick Room as well, but not a lot of slower Pokemon on his side of the field. Sometimes you'll see Palkia paired with something like a Stakataka with a really, really intimidating Trick Room presence, but not something I'm seeing on this team right now.
Yeah, the steel type of choice is going to be the Scissor instead, and doesn't really care about the speed tiers. It's going to be going for those bullet punches most often, going for those priority attacks instead. So won't care too much about the Trick Room, but it's definitely a potential option that could come out from either the Palkia or the Mimikyu. But then you've still got the fast Pokemon with the Regieleki and that Landorus Incarnate. So a good mix between the team of the speed tiers here.
Yeah, no Rillaboom, no Urshifu, which is, some staple Pokemon we've come to see in this format. So a really nice, interesting, different team that, something that we haven't really seen a whole lot of today. But his opponent, as well as running something a little bit more, shall we say, standard here. He's running a Kyogre, but with an Entei, which is an interesting choice. Tornadus, Landorus, Therian, Togedemaru, and Serena. Serena's a Pokemon I love. I know you guys just played a game or just commentated the last set that had Serena, and Serena's one of those Pokemon that really changes the way that you play. If you're facing down a Serena, something like a Caesar is not going to want to be able to do its bullet punches with Queenly Majesty out on the field.
Yeah, definitely a good Pokemon to be able to counter that Scizor. And we'll still have to see if the core of the Tornadus, Kyogre, and Serena, whether that's going to get a name for the trio rather than just the duo of the Tornoga here. But going to be Togedemaru as the Pokemon of choice instead of something like the Regieleki that we commonly see. Even the Raichu as well to get the Lightning Rods to protect that Kyogre. Going to be able to get access to that Steel typing to have a slightly better matchup against some Pokemon. Going to be slightly slower than the Raichu, but definitely going to be a reasonable pick into this Palkia here.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, the fact that there wasn't a lot of, seeing something like a wide guard either on Andrew's team. And, wide guard has been something that is a really good Kyogre counter, but not seeing that right now with Tiago's team. So, or with Andrew's team versus Tiago. So I think Tiago has a really interesting team here. He can set the rain with Kyogre if he's running Rain Dance on Tornadus, which I have seen, which can be really funky. He could be doing that, but Tornadus, able to set that Tailwind, able to do a lot of cheeky prankster things, while Serena, I think, is going to keep Andrew thinking, worrying about those switch-ins. Is he able to get a fake out off with that Incineroar on his side, or is he going to have to take care of that Serena before he can move forward?
And Serena's probably the best way of breaking through the Palkia. Palkia is classically the restricted you go to if you want to be able to have a really good matchup against Kyogre teams. So you do need to be relying on usually your other Pokemon to be able to break through it as well. Because Kyogre will be completely resisted by the 4x resistance of the Water and the Dragon typing from the Palkia. You've got the Togedemaru to keep it safe from the Regieleki at least. So the Kyogre will have effectively free reign to go for those Water Spouts if it wants to. The priority from the bullet punches from the Scizor won't really do too much damage and could be threatened by the Serena's Queenie Majesty as well. So could potentially start going for those water spouts even in the face of the Palkia. You're still going to do good damage to the opposing Pokemon that is next to it, but then you do have to worry about that Trick Room being set up. Even though there weren't too many slow Pokemon on the Philippines side of the field, even if you get that Trick Room up, you're still probably going to be slower than the Pokemon coming out from Tiago's side.
Absolutely. Just depending exactly on what the leads are going to be here, we are going to jump right into this game. There is no team preview, so this will be just as much of a surprise for us as it will be for you guys for both of the leads here on this side. We are going to see, though, from the opponent, from the Togedemaru and the Tornadus here, so that is from Tiago's side, while from Andrew we have the Palkia and the Regieleki. So that Regieleki not going to be loving that the Togedemaru is on the opponent's side here, but Palkia immediately putting that really intimidating presence out.
Yeah, Togedemaru is definitely the Pokemon you want up against that Regieleki as the lead. Being able to catch that very well, you could potentially go for a fake out into the Palkia and effectively make the Regieleki somewhat useless this turn. It can still go for an Electro Web to bypass the Lightning Rods and hit that Tornadus for some very good damage still. But then you still got to worry about the attacks that come out from the Tornadus. A Hurricane would still do some good damage to the Palkia, but you can start getting those Tailwinds set up so you can potentially outspeed the Regieleki as well for the Kyogre waiting in the back. But then you do have to be worried that the Trick Room still could come out from the Palkia. Maybe you have a Taunt on the Tornadus to be able to put a stop to those Trick Rooms that could come out, because you don't really worry too much about the Regieleki. We'll have to see if there's going to be a Focus Sash on the Tornadus as well if the Regieleki does decide to attack, but it's going to be switching out instead here.
Yeah, instead switching out for that Landorus on Andrew's side, that Landorus Incarnate with that Sheer Force ability. Palkia going for a Protect here, not going to want to take a Fake Out from this Togedemaru. Togedemaru, of course, does go for the Fake Out, but it instead goes into the Landorus slot, so either way, a pretty safe Fake Out there. But the Taunt from the Tornadus goes into the protected Palkia slot, so Palkia not going to be taunted this turn either.
Yeah, so still has access to go for Trick Room this turn. Looks like Tiago was expecting that Palkia to go for a Trick Room. Maybe switch into another Pokemon as well, but covering for that with the Regieleki getting faked out. You break the Focus Sash on the Regieleki, and you stop any Electro Webs from being able to do some really good damage to your Tornadus, and stop the speed drops as well so that your Tornadus still definitely outspeed the Palkia next turn. So definitely a reasonable turn coming out from both players here. Palkia still could go for that Trick Room, but now knows that the Tornadus does carry the Taunt, so it's going to be a lot more awkward to go for that Trick Room. But the Landorus is sitting in a really, really nice position here, but maybe not in the face of an Icy Wind.
Yeah, that Icy Wind going into Palkia and into Landorus does a ton of damage onto that Landorus and is going to drop the speed. So Tiago said, screw it, if I can't get my Electro Web off early, I'm going to get it off right now, not let you get yours off from your Regieleki. Going for a Zing Zap as well into the Palkia, while the Landorus on Andrew's side goes for a substitute, but that really massive Icy Wind means there's not enough HP, while a Spatial Rend from that Palkia goes into the Tornadus, and that is enough to get the one-hit knockout on Tiago's side, but that really, really massive Icy Wind there was enough to stop that Landorus Incarnate from getting that substitute up.
Yeah, you usually just use Icy Wind just for the speed control, but still being 4 times super effective against that Landorus, still doing a huge amount of damage, putting it out of range of being able to get that substitute up. And now that Palkia has got that speed drop on it as well from the Icy Wind, which is what you usually use it for, that Serena should be outspeeding it at this point. You don't have the taunt potential anymore from your Tornadus that has left the field. It wasn't carrying the Focus Sash, but Serena, in combination with Togedemaru, could be strong enough to be able to pick up the knockout on this Palkia. But then if you do go for the double target into the Palkia, that still leaves the Landorus free to go for an Earth Power into the Togedemaru, maybe a Sludge Bomb into the Serena to do some good damage. Could still potentially be outspeeding the Serena depending on how the Pokemon are trained here, whether they are trained to be able to outspeed the Landorus after the Icy Wind drop. But still going to be able to do some really good damage to the Serena. Definitely a strong switch in to be able to do some good damage. Kyogre wouldn't have been able to threaten down that Palkia too much.
Palkia goes for the Protect this turn, though, not getting any damage from either of these Pokemon, maybe hoping for that double target. An Iron Head from the Togedemaru, though, into the Landorus is enough to get that knockout, so that Landorus is not going to be able to get off a very powerful Sludge Bomb or something onto that Serena. Serena goes for a Power Whip into the Palkia slot, not able to do any damage there because of that Protect, but definitely nice to know that that's what it's, what it's running for a Pokemon like Palkia with that water typing, trying to get some really good damage off. And then Andrew instead brings the Mimikyu in for his fainted Landorus.
So you get to see that Togedemaru is carrying the coverage of both Zingzap and Iron Head there. So some really nice information, but able to knock out the Landorus with that Iron Head. So really nice KO there. Togedemaru has freed itself up a reasonable amount since the Landorus was the best way of breaking through that Togedemaru. You've still got the Regieleki waiting in the back that's not going to be able to do anything to the Togedemaru at this point. Mimikyu won't be able to do too much. You go for some maybe Shadow Sneaks to chip down the Togedemaru, break the Focus Sash that could be on the Togedemaru as well. But you can still effectively get your Trick Room up effectively guaranteed at this point if you're the Mimikyu. The Palkia could still be going for it as well. It has just gone for a Protect, so it's still going to be a bit awkward facing down this arena. It could be taking a very powerful Power Whip and potentially a Zingzap as well.
Yeah, it does take that Zingzap, which it didn't like in the first place, didn't like again, while that Mimikyu goes for a Play Rough into this arena, does maybe about a quarter of its HP, while the Power Whip from this arena here into that Palkia slot will be enough to finish it off, so that is a big knockout by taking out Andrew's restricted Pokemon here, while the Mimikyu is able to get that one Play Rough off, but doesn't go for something like a Trick Room here, which it's free to do, but it does have that partner Regieleki in the back, which wouldn't love a Trick Room, and definitely isn't loving that this Togedemaru is still alive on the field for Tiago's side.
Yeah, it's not really a sentence I thought I'd say, but what does Andrew have for this Togedemaru at this point? So, yeah, the Regieleki is effectively useless. Even going for Electro Web to bypass the Lightning Rod isn't really going to do too much damage to the Serena at this point. The Play Rough really not doing too much damage to Serena either. That's going to be Mimikyu's best way of dealing damage at this point. And yeah, not really going to be able to break through the Serena and the Togedemaru. Not even needing the Kyogre in this game for Tiago. Able to deal with that Palkia pretty effectively. That Icy Winds drop coming in crucial so that the Serena could outspeed, get that Power Whip off in combination with the Zingzap. You had the potential to go for the attack for Landorus, got KO'd that turn. If you were able to survive the Power Whip, you'd still be able to get off a really big attack with the Palkia. But at this point, Regieleki is pretty much just stuck going for Electro Web.
Yeah, and that Electro Web is only going to be powering up Togedemaru there with that Lightning Rod ability while slowing down Serena and just doing a very small amount of chip damage. And we saw how much that Play Rough did, so that is not going to be enough to get it into the knockout range. The Togedemaru goes for a Nuzzle onto the Mimikyu, getting that paralysis there, and maybe trying to make it so that it isn't able to do a whole lot of damage. But it does break that Disguise, so Mimikyu now loses its little fake extra substitute. Serena goes for a Grassy Glide without the terrain, gets a really good amount of damage off onto the Regieleki, possibly breaking a Sash if it's holding one, while the Mimikyu goes for a Play Rough here into the Serena, and again, really isn't able to even get it down to the bottom 25% of its health.
We get to see all four moves coming out from this Togedemaru as well. And they are all full four offensive moves, so you do have to worry if that's going to be carrying the Assault Burst on the Togedemaru. But we've got no real way to confirm either way because it hasn't taken any damage at this point. The Togedemaru is just being able to do exactly what it wants for the entirety of the game, and it's not going to be worry about this Electro Web at all. That's still just going to have to come out from the Regieleki.
Yeah, once again, that Electro Web raises a little bit, raises the stats for the Togedemaru there, but then slows down the Serena, does a little bit more chip damage. Togedemaru going for an Iron Head into Fairy-type Mimikyu isn't enough to get the KO, brings it just down to a very small amount of its HP. The Mimikyu does flinch, though, and cannot move, while the Grassy Glide goes into the Regieleki, which gets knocked out. So this is pretty much game here. Obviously, you know, Andrew could try and get something out with this Mimikyu, but I think he knows it's in his best interest to, you know, take the information that he has gathered from this game one and really try and make a new game plan for that Mimikyu. I think that Landorus Incarnate is something that he's got to keep alive, got to find a way to handle that Togedemaru early so he can get his Pokemon in that want to take care of the rest of the Pokemon on Tiago's side.
Yeah, the Landorus is definitely the best way through that Togedemaru. If you bring Regieleki, you've got to find some way of dealing with the Togedemaru, but it remained untouched the entirety of the game, and I think if it would effectively have picked up 3 knockouts in that game, one of them on the Landorus Incarnate itself, which is not something you would expect at all. Landorus naturally outspeeding Togedemaru, going to be resisting the electric type attacks, but the Icy Winds was really, really clutch coming out for Tiago, getting some huge damage onto the Landorus, meaning there was no substitute that could come out, putting the Landorus slower than the Togedemaru, even allowed it to get that KO with the Iron Head. And then after that, there wasn't really any way of coming back into the game. Maybe if the Power Whip would have missed from the Serena, but you're able to be strong enough to knock out the Palkia in that case, not even needing your own restricted in that Kyogre at all. So yeah, you definitely need to find a way of breaking through that Togedemaru if you are on Andrew's side of the field. Landorus is easily the best way of doing it. I don't think I would be considering that Regieleki too much because that Togedemaru just put in so much work. But then at the same time, you do need some way of breaking through that Kyogre, even if it isn't hitting the field for a little while. The Palkia can resist it very well, but then if you're not dealing with the opposing Pokemon quickly enough, the Serena can still do very good damage. The Zingzap was doing pretty reasonable damage to the Palkia as well. Hurricane would do some good damage from the Tornadus as well. You don't need to worry too much about the Kyogre being able to beat the Palkia. The Togedemaru surprisingly is the threat that Andrew needs to be able to break through, and Landorus I would expect to come to the game, maybe Incineroar even come to the game and get to the Intimidates down, matching some fake outs from the Togedemaru, getting some damage down with the Flare Bits as well. We'll have to see if the Sizzle's got any coverage as well. You would almost certainly expect the Bullet Punch to come out from Sizzle, but it does often carry something like the Superpower. Maybe if it's carrying that, you could bring that to the Togedemaru to be able to break through it, but if it's just carrying its normal Bug and Steel typing, that's also not going to be very effective at breaking through the Togedemaru, and we'll have to see if that Togedemaru is carrying the Assault Vest as well, as it is carrying all 4 offensive moves. It does have the option of carrying that Assault Vest, and that would make it even stronger into the opposing Palkia.
Yeah, and of course, like we saw both of those Pokemon on his side, we don't even know exactly if he brought the Kyogre there. He could have just not brought it, you know, especially Kyogre doesn't do a whole ton of damage to Palkia. But the leads here, instead, we see that Tornadus and the Togedemaru once again, but then we see the Palkia and the Incineroar. So the Incineroar there, a bit of a change, getting that fake out pressure, just like that Togedemaru has. Maybe trying to prevent something like that Icy Wind, something into that Tornadus, but you do have to be wary of the Serena switch in here.
It's definitely much stronger into the Togedemaru though. Even if you're not going to be able to threaten it down if it gets the fake out into the Incineroar first, you've got an Intimidate down at least, so it's going to be doing not as much damage as it did in the previous game. Like you said, you do need to be worried about that Serena switch in that could stop any of the fake outs coming into the Tornadus or the Togedemaru. If you switch into the Serena, you pretty much get a guaranteed taunt into the Palkia to be able to stop any of the Trick Rooms, but fake out is definitely a way of stopping that as well, but it's going into the Incineroar.
Yeah, the fake out into the Incineroar while the Tornadus goes for the taunt into the Palkia, so maybe trying to stop that Trick Room that could come out this turn. Instead, a Spatial Rend here from the Palkia, so no Trick Room whatsoever, not worried about taking that taunt, and that Spatial Rend is almost enough to knock out the Tornadus, just hanging on with a little bit of sliver of health.
Yeah, we saw it pick up the one-hit knockout in the previous game, so looks like it's going to be a roll of whether that's able to pick up the knockout on the Tornadus there. But allowing it to survive means it's able to fire off another attack here. Could be an Icy Wind just to get that speed control going. You know the Palkia can't go for Trick Room anymore because it has been taunted. You could potentially switch into your Kyogre to get the 100% accurate Hurricanes, or you could just be going for just the Tailwind here instead.
Yeah, that supportive Tailwind boosting the speed on Tiago's side, while the Togedemaru goes for a Nuzzle into the Palkia, so the Palkia is going to get that paralysis and a little bit of HP chip, and the Incineroar going for a U-turn here into the Togedemaru slot, finally taking a little bit of damage off that Togedemaru, which didn't even get touched last game, I believe. Maybe trying to hope for a full paralysis here from this Palkia, not able to get any extra Spatial Rends off. If he is, then he isn't going to have to worry about losing his Tornadus again this turn. You know, he may be looking for a free switch in. The Landorus, though, comes in for Andrew here, trying to probably take care of that Togedemaru. Palkia, not fully paralyzed, though, gets that Hydro Pump off into the Togedemaru slot on Tiago's side, and that is enough for a one-hit, or for a knockout there, not a one-hit, apologies. But that is a huge change. Now that Landorus Therian, or Landorus Incarnate is on the field, it doesn't even have to worry about taking care of that Togedemaru, and the Kyogre instead comes in for Tiago.
Yeah, you've taken care of the biggest threat on Tiago's side of the field in that Togedemaru. Now you only have to contend with a full HP Kyogre and Tailwind that is just switched in instead. The Palkia is definitely the Pokemon you want to be taking on that Kyogre, but Landorus certainly is not, and Landorus' job has effectively been done now. The Togedemaru has been taken care of by that Palkia, so it's just going to be protecting itself from the board spout that should be coming out from this Kyogre.
Yeah, the fully accurate Hurricane, though, into the Palkia does a pretty good chunk of damage, and the Water Spout here from the Kyogre is not going to be doing a ton of damage into this Palkia, but it won't be doing any damage into that protected Landorus slot. It is still full health, so it is still enough to get it almost down to 25% of its HP, and it was a critical hit, so that might be why it looked so strong. Palkia going for the Spatial Rend here, once again, into the Kyogre slot, and that does just over half, so those Water Spouts won't be able to do a whole lot more damage, especially if this Kyogre is possibly scarfed into that move.
Potentially, but then at the same time, the Palkia has been put into Hurricane range at this point from the Tornadus, so it doesn't have to worry too much about that anymore. There should be one more turn of Taunt as well, so there's not really anything stopping you from going for that Hurricane into the opposing Palkia. If you're not locked into the Water Spout, you can still just switch up your move. If that's an Origin Pulse, you still have to hit that Landorus. If it's just going for the Ice Beam, that would be able to pick up the knockout, but then you have to worry about the Incineroar that could switch in onto that Landorus. It would be an incredibly risky switch in for the Incineroar that could just be eating a Water type move, but if you catch an Ice Beam, that would be a very strong switch in to be able to stall out this Tailwind as well, but Landorus is still really not in a strong position at all.
Yeah, Palkia actually was able to shake off the top that last turn, so it may be free to go for something like a Trick Room here. Kyogre instead goes for a Protect, revealing it's not holding any sort of choice item. Palkia gets fully paralyzed though, not going to be able to do any damage, while an Icy Wind from the Tornadus, which we saw did massive damage last game, takes this Palkia down to the bottom 25%, takes well over half of the HP down from Landorus, lowers the speed on both of these Pokemon. Palkia is already going extremely slow. Landorus goes for an Earth Power into that protected Kyogre slot, so a really tough turn for Andrew here, wasn't able to get any momentum.
And that was a potential chance to get the knockout on the Tornadus to stop any Tailwinds coming up from the future, or go for the Trick Room, as it did shake off that taunt previously. And that was an opportunity to go for that Trick Room, but instead, just getting paralyzed instead, as it looked like it was going for a Protect. And Landorus is going to be finally switching into that Incineroar.
Yeah, the Incineroar gets that Intimidate off onto both of these Pokemon, who aren't really all that worried about an Intimidate, but that Fake Out pressure is really what's nice here. Tornadus going for that Hurricane, of course, in the rain will be enough to take that Palkia out. Palkia wasn't able to do as much damage as it wanted to, I believe, especially, that full paralysis. Kyogre goes for a Scald, though, into the Incineroar slot, which is enough to take it out with that rain boosted there, and that is a really big knockout, not able to get it down to where it doesn't, live that hit there and eat a berry, but Incineroar now not able to get that Fake Out pressure in, wasn't having any luck with that Intimidate with two special attackers on the opponent's side. And then the Landorus comes in here, and Landorus is not super happy to be here. Regieleki is doing a lot better than it was last game though.
Yeah, Togedemaru has been taken care of at this point, so Regieleki is a lot more free at this point. Can just go for an Electro Web, potentially knocking out the Kyogre at this point, definitely going to be taking care of the Tornadus. But Landorus still isn't really in the strongest of positions, that's probably why it's protecting itself here.
Yeah, it does get the Protect. Kyogre also protects here, trying to not take any big damage from this Regieleki, seeing if it does go for something like Electro Web here, but a Tailwind coming out from the Tornadus, so that is going to try and keep the speed boosted on Tiago's side of the field, and it eats a berry here too, an Electric Weakness berry, but that isn't going to be enough to hold it off from the extra damage from that Electro Web. It really wasn't hanging out with much of a sliver, and we know exactly how strong Regieleki is.
Yeah, and it's interesting having the Wacom Berry there when you've got the Togedemaru also protecting from the Electro type moves, so not going to be coming into play here too much. At least you get to see which item of choice it was, but now you've got the Serena and the Kyogre back into Tailwind once again, and the Landorus has just protected, so the Kyogre can just fire off one of those Scalds or Ice Beams to pick up the knockout on the Landorus at this point. Maybe go for the Regieleki as well, so you can bring it down to its Focus Sash as well. The Serena not threatened too much if the Landorus gets knocked out, so the Landorus has just protected. You could just go for an attack into that Landorus to take care of the threat to the Serena, but it's instead going to be a Scald into this Focus Sash Regieleki.
Yeah, and of course that Regieleki feels much more like the big threat here. The Regieleki goes for an Electro Web, but Serena avoids it. Huge avoid there from Serena. Kyogre does take that damage. Isn't a knockout though. Still lives with a bit of HP, but is slowed down after that Tailwind boost. Serena goes for a Grassy Glide into the Landorus slot. That will be enough to knock it out. So this Regieleki, might have to be a little bit luckier getting an Electro Web to knock out that Kyogre, and maybe some sort of Power Whip miss or something from the Serena, but I think this is once again really comfortably in Tiago's hands.
Yeah, you've got Grassy Glide, so you don't need to worry about that shaky accuracy of the Power Whip. And it's interesting that the Serena was still able to outspeed that Landorus as well after it had taken that Electro Web. Very crucial there, so it could get the Grassy Glide into the Landorus before any Sludge Bombs could have come out into that Serena. The Kyogre just protecting itself here so it doesn't faint to the Electro Web, as Serena is going to be able to clean up this game after the Regieleki goes for this Electro Web.
Yeah, so the Serena actually last turn, because it missed the Electro Web, it didn't get that speed drop, which is why it was still able to outspeed that Landorus there. Does get the speed drop now, though, by taking that damage from the Electro Web. Serena, of course, goes for that Grassy Glide. We'll take that last 1 HP off of the Regieleki, and we'll secure this game for Tiago. So a really dominant win both games from Tiago, showing exactly how impressive, even without the Togedemaru for the entirety of having the Regieleki on the field for Andrew's side, he was still able to to make sure that it wasn't able to do exactly what it wanted to do by just getting off some really powerful moves, something like that Electro Web wasn't able to be as effective as he wanted, especially by not getting that Serena to drop that one stage of speed when he needed it to, so he could get a Sludge Bomb off and get that knockout. So that miss, I think, was really pivotal towards the end of the game.
Yeah, and it's interesting that if you say someone's going Palkia versus Kyogre, you would expect the Palkia to have a huge advantage there, but Kyogre being able to take that very comfortably. And yeah, it didn't even have to hit the field in that game one, was able to put on some good pressure in that game two as well. But Togedemaru was a really smart choice coming out for Tiago. Just the threat of the Lightning Rod meant Regieleki wasn't able to do what it wanted at all in that game one, and left it in the back in that game two, when Tiago had already put themselves into a position to be able to take the game at that point. So yeah, really, really strong play coming out from Tiago here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a great game. So that does make it, with Tiago winning, that does cement, I believe, actually that doesn't fully cement because it was only 2-1, but that makes it a 3-1 lead for Switzerland over the Philippines. So that is, maybe one more win there, and they have the bare minimum of the tie, and, a pretty standard, pretty safe journey to go on for the win for them for this week. So I think that is going to do it for us. We will take a quick break, and then I will be back with Lou for the America versus Australia game, which I absolutely cannot wait to cast. Thank you, guys.